It's your girl, Professor Cinephile, and I every now and then there's a film that I know I could spend an hour talking about or more. Like I actually can talk about them for multiple days because they are films that are that important to me and that important to the culture and like game-changing kind of things. And so I've actually talked about this film before many years ago on Twitter. And I thought it'd be a good time to bring it back because there's a new film coming out called Wicked. And Wicked is an alternative interpretation of the Wizard of Oz story. Well, the Wizard of Oz story is a classic story. Um, when the original film stars Judy Garland and a bunch of other folks, and it's about Dorothy, and she gets knocked upside her head. She ends up in this dreamland called Oz, and she's trying to find the wizard. She can find her way to get back home. You all know the story. You should know the story by now. And so Wicked is coming out, and I'm not a big fan of Wicked. It was a book first, musical, all these things. I've just never been a big fan of it. And it's coming out. I won't be reviewing it probably because I have no intention of seeing it. I don't like Cynthia Erivo. I'm not a big fan of Ariana Grande, so I'm gonna skip it. However, I am gonna talk about The Wiz. Dun, dun, dun. The Wiz, which is my second favorite musical of all time. And as I said, I could talk about this for an hour. I'm not going to do that. I know that in 2024, people do not have the attention span that they once had, but I have a lot of important things to say about this film. Um, just and I'm going to be talking specifically about the film that stars Diana Ross and Michael Jackson and Nipsey Russell and Mabel King. And, I'm going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the Broadway show, Stephanie Mills. I'm not going to talk about the live action joint that was on NBC. That was decent. I'm going to talk about the original film, The Wiz. And I'm also talking about it because we recently lost Quincy Jones. I have so many conflicting feelings about Quincy Jones, but we cannot deny that he is one of those people that deserves the label of musical genius, right? And his influence is just so far-reaching. What he did with this damn film is out of this world, but we'll get into that. So, we're going to talk about The Wiz. If you have never seen The Wiz, of course, I'm going to issue a spoiler alert because spoilers, I'm going to talk heavily about this film. I would hope that you've seen The Wiz by now, but if you haven't, I hope that this review really inspires you to go watch it. Okay, so first let's talk about the context and the setting of this, right? So The Wiz comes in the 1970s. It comes about a year before I was born, right? And we're talking like post civil rights movement, post Black Power movement. Black people are struggling. We are struggling. Vietnam War has decimated our communities. All of our heroes and our leaders are either dead or in jail. But the Black arts movement, right? The Black arts movement is happening. And in that movement, we are seeing radical Black artists emerge with art that is challenging the status quo, that is empowering us, that is making us love being Black, right? Trying to basically save us from this depression kind of left by the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement. So we're going to situate the Wiz in the Black arts movement. Okay. We are going to talk about the ways in which Black people, African Americans, have taken classic narratives and basically like blackened them up, right? And in doing so, invite us to participate in kind of liberation conversations, right? I want you to watch The Wiz as a liberation narrative. I don't want you to watch it as a Black version of The Wizard of Oz. I want you to watch The Wiz as an independent Black liberation story. Okay. So it's set in Harlem, right? Diana Ross plays Dorothy, and she lives in Harlem. And they're struggling like many Black people were at that time in Harlem. economically, New York was really, really like, especially in the late 70s, literally New York was on fire. Like, and I'm from the Bronx, and there were areas of the Bronx that were literally on fire, burnt buildings, a lot of abandonment, a lot of poverty. People were struggling, right? So it's kind of set in that space. And Dorothy, it does follow the Wizard of Oz story. So she ends up in this other land, Oz, right? But what she's encountering along the way, again, it follows the similar story. She meets these people along the way, and they are helping her on her journey to get home. Dorothy is a school teacher, right? Back at home. She comes to the land of Oz, and this becomes a journey of her trying to figure out who she's going to be because she was, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, they're getting on her like, why are you still living here? Right? Like, why haven't you gone out there and started your own life? You're 24 years old. And at that time, it's kind of, it was kind of like an urgent, like, get out the house, right? We were pushing people out. We shouldn't have been, but pushing people out. And so she's not married. She's not living on her own. So her journey through Oz really is a kind of a reflection of kind of where she is, right? And she's 24, and that's an interesting age to give her because we're thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and others who got their start in this liberation movement around that age. 24 is a big age. Usually 24 to 26, those are a huge time in revolutionary movements, right? And so she's 24, so she's embarking on this journey of self-discovery, right? So, of course, the first person she comes across, the Scarecrow, very similar to the book and the original film. This is played by Michael Jackson. Okay, so again, let's give some context. Michael Jackson, it was for most of his youth the lead singer of the biggest boy group in history, right? The Jackson Five. I don't care what they say about the Beatles. Jackson Five were it, especially for Black people. Okay, he's trying to establish himself as a solo artist, right? And so he gets into this film as a way of being like, I'm Michael Jackson. I'm here. I'm multifaceted. I don't just sing with my brothers. I can act. I can dance. I can do all these things. I can perform. Like, put me in, coach. And, Michael and Diana have whatever kind of interesting work relationship that they have. Michael is all up in the Motown. So he gets this job and he's now playing the Scarecrow, right? But the thing is, she encounters him. He's made of trash, and he's being taunted by crows. And it's really interesting because the crow symbolism, whenever we see crows in literature and film and things like that, it's really talking about like it can either be a negative omen or it can be about intelligence and transformation and bravery and confidence and those kinds of things. And so him being a scarecrow, his job is to kind of scare away, keep these crows away, but they're not scared of him or whatever. So they're kind of there. And you can tell they're on Dorothy and the scarecrow on the precipice of a major transformation, right? So you get this classic, classic, classic song, You Can't Win. Okay. One of the songs, it's like, some films and musicals and things like that, they'll have those songs that's like, you get commercial, like radio play. You Can't Win is one of those songs, right? It played on the radio. You'll hear You Can't Win played at like parties, okay? The Michael Jackson parties, they're going to play that and people are going to get up and dance. Okay, that's how good that song was, right? Okay, so then they're moving along and to the Tin Man, okay? Tin Man is played by Nipsey Russell, and he's got two songs, right? That we enjoy. Um, he's got What Would I Do If I Could Feel, and he's got Slide Some Oil to Me, right? And when you think about the Tin Man and kind of this idea that he just wants a heart, right? Gotta put this again in Black liberation context, all right? So this is somebody who is like, you know, I can't move. I don't have a heart. I can't move. I can't move my body. I like I'm stuck here. And for me, it kind of represents the heart of the Black community. Like I can't do these things without this heart, without this heart beating in me. We can't move. We can't do anything. We are stuck if we don't have this heart, right? And so we're getting the symbolism. Again, we're talking scarecrow intelligence. He just wants a brain, but it's like, no, we just want to be smart. We have been denied access to education, to adequate education, to literacy for hundreds of years. We want this. We want to transform and become educated. Through the Tin Man, we see that like we need this heart. This heart is where we are, right? And then they move along and they get to the lion who wants courage, right? And he's at the New York Public Library and it's like, I'm a mean old lion and all this stuff. And his thing is all about bravery and courage, which we need, right? Our people need bravery and courage to survive white supremacy and to fight back and to resist, right? I really love how each of these characters represents an aspect of Black cultural consciousness. And when they all come together with Dorothy, it's like they're there to help her figure out her life path, but she realizes that you cannot get far anywhere you cannot get anywhere as a Black person in this world without these things. And her whole quest is to go home. And if we think about the Sankofa principle, go back and fetch it, go back and learn from what from the past and bring it to the future. There's definitely a Sankofa theme throughout this entire film. It's like she just wants to get home, but as she's getting home, she's learning all these different things, not only about herself, but about her community, right? And it's just awesome. Like you'll never watch The Wiz again. And what bothers me is that when it came out, they trashed it. They trashed it, right? Diana can't sing. We know she can't really sing. What was Michael Jackson doing? Like they said it was a mess and all these things like that. But I'm sorry. Like, first of all, Luther Vandross is on the book, right? And he was writing the songs and Quincy comes and he, zhuzhes them up and then adds some new songs to it. Um, how do you trash Luther Vandross and Quincy Jones? It's just like I will never understand that. And maybe because I wasn't there, but we definitely know that the Wiz itself, like I would say over the last 20 years, maybe the last 10 years, has kind of like reemerged and people are understanding it now for this Black liberation narrative that it is, right? So we've got all kinds of symbolism in this. So let's break that down. First, representations of the Great Migration, right? So the Great Migration was a time when about 6 million Black people moved from the South and rural areas and moved into industrialized cities. So New York City, Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, right? These northern cities that were booming with industry, right? A lot of people were feeling disoriented, right? Dorothy kind of represents that. Because if you think of the original film, it's, Dorothy's from Kansas, right? But now we have Dorothy's in Harlem and she's 24 living with her aunt and uncle. She's a bit disoriented. She's not really used to this urban life. So she's still trying to figure herself out. That represents a lot of what Black folks were feeling. Like they were trying to adjust to this kind of new urban life when they're coming from like centuries of like agricultural, like, farming kind of lives, right? Then we get the symbolism of gentrification, right? So when Dorothy first arrives in the land of Oz, she encounters the Munchkins, right? But the Munchkins are kind of like spray painted into the wall and they've been like stuck there by the Wicked Witch of the East, who is named Evamine. They're stuck there, right? This used to be their playground. This is where they hung out. This is their neighborhood, but have now been frozen. And Evamine kind of represents that, that white supremacist gentrification and the theft of cultural resources from these urban centers. And so they're kind of frozen in time. And so when Dorothy comes, she frees them of that. And they're like really grateful because she's taken out this Evamine, this gentrifying person, and they can kind of go back to being who they are. And so they are led by the Good Witch, whose name is Miss One. She's a numbers runner and things like that, like kind of representing this underground work that Black people had to do. Like we have the hustle, right? Because being denied opportunities for legitimate work, we often hustled. And so she kind of runs this space and she can now come back and be there and with the Munchkins and they can go back to doing what they were doing. So when we get to the scarecrow and the crow scene, right? I know I touched on a little bit about like the symbolism of just plain old crows and transformation and intelligence and things like that. But in this context, these crows literally represent Jim Crow, okay? And what Black people had been living under these Jim Crow laws, these deep segregation laws, particularly in the South, but also in the North. And they are basically singing a song like, you ain't ever gonna do this. You're never gonna win. You're never gonna get past this. Like, this is your plight. You, Black man, this is all you are ever going to be, right? that oppression that we experienced under Jim Crow had so many African Americans feeling like there was no hope, there were no options. They're not going to let us into their schools. They're not going to give us our jobs. What, we're just hopeless. And again, we lost all of our leaders, right? So those crows are like symbolically representing the actual Jim Crow and the oppression of Jim Crow laws. While I definitely make a connection with the Tin Man's you know, lack of heart as being, he's kind of disconnected from the heartbeat of the Black community. It also, and I could be reaching here, but I do think that there was commentary being made on the disconnect between Black men and Black women, because he talks about his wife, like he's like his fourth wife, I think, third or fourth wife, Teenie, who is ultimately the reason why he is kind of frozen in place and he's unable to move. And, it's like, oh, does he have a broken heart or had he done her dirty? And he kind of suggests that he was not the best kind of man. And so at this time, we're also getting things like the Moynihan Report. We're getting the Truly Disadvantaged by William Julius Wilson. We're getting all these people kind of speculating on the Black condition and the condition of the Black family. And so it's no surprise that that comes up in this film, right? This kind of disconnect between Black men and Black women that can only be repaired through this love, right? That we have to like kind of get back to loving each other. So I kind of see that. You might think differently. I think another interesting thing is when they are with the lion and he's like doing all this performing. He's got like this hair that is flowing and beautiful. I mean, at the time, if you think about the late 70s and stuff, what's popular is black exploitation, pimp culture. Black men are dressing extravagantly, and you think of Barry White with his curls and all these other things. I think that there's a commentary there also on like hypermasculinity and what that represents within our communities, that like our men have not been allowed to be tender, I guess, or to emote anything other than bravery, courage, anger, frustration, right? But deep down inside, this lion is definitely scared. Why wouldn't he be scared? He's living under oppression, right? Like, why wouldn't Black men be scared? And why don't we allow them to be scared and to be worried and to have these fears and things like that? They are experiencing that. So I think there was a commentary on that too. Again, I could be reaching, but I don't think that I am. I think there's so many layers of symbolism in this film that you can't help but think about that, right? There was an article that came out in the New York Times, December of 1975, and the title was, Does the Wiz Say Something Extra to Blacks? Right? And that was related to the play, right? Remember, the film comes out in 78. And yes, it does, right? And so we are allowed to unpack some of this, right? You think of the Wicked Witch of the West, when she comes out, she's got all these people enslaved working for her, right? And she's treating them. She's got a whip even. She's like coming at them like just you work for me, you struggle, you suffer under me, right? And that is definitely representing the impact of slavery, the longstanding impact of slavery, even though it supposedly ended with the Emancipation Proclamation. We know that slavery continues to this day, 2024. We still have California just voted to keep slavery on the books. So this is definitely symbolism there, and how she represents that oppressor, that enslaver, and what has been done to us for centuries, right? And so when Dorothy ends up killing her, right? Which is interesting because she dies by water, and the water, you got to think of the water symbolism, especially for African Americans in the Black church, right? This baptism, this cleansing, right? And so she's able to kind of cleanse Eveline, the Wicked Witch of the West. She's able to cleanse her of her evil, and in doing so, she releases all the people that are, enslaved to her. And right, and that's kind of like what the Black liberation fight is, right? It is one to get the oppressors to stop, to free themselves, right? Paulo Freire talks about how the oppressors have to free themselves. It's not our jobs to do it. But here they are imagining that we are able to do that. And if we could liberate the oppressor of this thing that oppresses them, then everybody else can be free, right? It's like powerful. And then Luther Vandross writes this song that is just chilling, chilling, okay? But in the film, Um, they're singing, they're like, everybody rejoice because everybody rejoice because there's a reason to rejoice to see. Everybody look up because it's morning into happiness. Hello, world. It's just a different way of living now. Thank you, world. We always knew that we'd be free somehow, right? But then Nipsey Russell comes in one line, he's like, free at last, right? So that's a direct throw to Martin Luther King, right? And honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King. I'm gonna see if I can put that in there right now. Hold on.
Everybody be glad, cause the sun is shining just for us. Everybody wake up into the morning, into happiness. Hello, world, like a different way of living now. And thank you, world. Always knew that we'd be free somehow. Free at last.
Okay. Then there is the symbolism of intergenerational issues, right? So we at that time, right? So again, 1978, we're on the press, we're hip hop already exists, right? 1973. So we're 5 years into this. It's about to hit the mainstream in 1979, right? In the following like August of 1979. So there's some shift with the young people. They got something to say, and they're not marching like their parents or their grandparents. They're not singing "We Shall Overcome." They are like hard hitting with gritty tales from these urban centers that they've moved to and that they have struggled with adjusting to, right? So hip hop is emerging as that language and that voice for that, right? Um, there's a big issue with drug use, right? Um, Especially for people that are returning from the war. Heroin addiction is growing. That's why we have the poppy seeds, the poppy dancers, and they present them as women, these kind of alluring women. And in literature, in music, and all these kinds of things, drugs are often written as women. If you think of D'Angelo's Brown Sugar, and there's a young rapper, Logic. He has a song about his addiction to cigarettes called Nicki, short for nicotine. You see that a lot, that symbolism a lot. So here we've got these poppy dancers, right? They're alluring, they're sexy, and things like that. And they are luring Black people into drug use, right? This is a very serious commentary here. And then kind of like depicting Emerald City as this like drug fueled, like raunchy kind of everybody free love, everybody's doing everything, sex is everywhere, there's no morals, there are no values. They kind of moved away from the church and stuff like that. So there's definitely an intergenerational commentary there that I think that people should pick up on. Again, remember, this is when Black exploitation is like, it's popping. It's this idea of this pimp culture and this kind of street culture and this hustling, and people are making money. And as the drugs are being flooded into the community because of Nixon, Black people are actually starting to make money in this. And there's definitely this conflict between seeing all these people now starting to have money, but then all these people are sick in the streets and just destroying their families and all these kinds of things, right? That tension is definitely played out, particularly in the Emerald City scene, where they are going through these different colors. It's like, I wouldn't be caught dead in red, and then everybody's wearing red. And then it's like, if you want to be seen, you got to be wearing green, and this is old, the new color is gold. And so a lot of shifts that's representing Black people trying to find their identity. Black people not really sure what to do right now. We don't know who we are right now. We don't have any strong leadership. We don't have, people making the headlines like Malcolm X and Dr. King and Rosa Parks and others like that. We don't have that anymore. That's kind of gone, right? And so who are we and who are we going to be? And there's a lot of like competition for what our identity is going to be. It's also a time of tremendous artistic growth for Black people. We've got the funk movement, we've got soul, gospel is going mainstream, right? You've got the Clark sisters, you've got Aretha Franklin has puts out an album. It's her best-selling album ever. It's her gospel album, right? So we're seeing all these kinds of these things that are emerging. Like I said, hip hop is emerging. There's a lot going on. And this is right before the Black pop star happens too. So there's a lot of things going on, and Black people are trying to figure out who they are. And so that's what I think is happening in that scene, is that kind of showing that one, there are different types of Black people. We're not monolithic, but then also that we are still trying to figure out our identity. We have a story that imagines Black people in a future, a liberated future, a free future, right? And so there is an Afrofuturist kind of element there. Okay, and so again, we're talking Sun Ra and Afrofuturism, movement is starting to really gain some ground at this time. Again, there's so much going on, right? And this film really kind of encapsulates all of this, right? And kind of puts it here. And I think it's so funny to me that it was trashed and panned because yeah, I mean it's corny. Like this is a corny film. Like you're gonna watch it and you're like, oh my God, this is corny. But I also know the intentional suppression of Black liberation narratives, particularly in cinema. And so I can't ignore that part as well. Like this film was a little too empowering, a little too inspirational. And white people don't like when Black people take white things and make it their own and even possibly make it better, right? Um, I really, really, really love how this film has touched people over generations. Like I said, it recently got, became more popular and it's on put it on Broadway, right? It went back to Broadway. Like I said, NBC had a live, I believe it was NBC, they had a live performance of it. Younger generations are learning about it. My son loves it. He actually likes the newer version, and then I had him watch the old one because he loves Michael Jackson. So, he was able to connect that. It's such a timeless story, and I do think you can divorce it from, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the book, the original film, things like that. It can stand alone. It really can, especially if you are watching it with this Black liberation lens. Um, Again, like I said, this is my second favorite musical of all time. Love this film, love, love, love it. I'm actually gonna give it, this is tough. I'm gonna give The Wiz 4 hearts, not 5. And I'm not giving it 5 because Diana Ross can't sing. And there was a lot of issues with their voices and their sounds clashing. You have all these different styles of musicians coming together, and I know they were trying to represent the diversity of African American music and things like that, but these people were clashing a bit. And I don't think that they had the best chemistry either. I just got, I'll be honest. But that's probably the drawbacks for me. A little bit long. Could have probably wrapped that up a little bit faster. There are definitely some scenes that I just kind of hit the fast forward button and want to get to the next thing. But overall, this is a film that I can watch over and over and over and over and over again. I'm actually going to go and watch it again after I upload this because I'm like, wow, I haven't watched it in a while. So let me go back and see if what my memory of this film is, if it still tracks. Yeah, 4 hearts. Go watch it. Watch it, watch it, watch it. It's streaming, it's available different places. You can watch it. Enjoy yourself. Watch it differently. Even if you've seen it before, watch it again. Watch it with new eyes. Watch it with a new consciousness. And I think that you're gonna love it too. All right. Make sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button, so that when I actually post videos again, you can catch them. If you've been following along, if you subscribed to me from the beginning, I recently shared that I am now doing film and television reviews and I'm writing them. And so that's kind of taken a bit more of my attention, but I am doing my best to keep up with this stuff. And so I'm glad that you're here. This is one of my longer ones. Like I said, I could talk about this for hours. I could talk about it for hours. But if you made it this far, thank you. And I'm so interested in what you think about The Wiz. Put it in the comments and let's have a conversation. All right, take care.